Technology.
Okay, we're good. All right, good morning. Good to see everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance if you're able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bomke?
Present.
Ms. Bagley? Here. Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Stork?
Here.
Ms. Bailey?
Present.
Mr. Walkinshaw? Ms. Franklin? Ms. Gary?
Present.
Mr. Gordy? Ms. Hayes?
Here.
Ms. Holmes?
Here.
Mr. Caratonis?
Here.
Mincing?
Here.
Mr. McLaughlin? Madam Chair.
Okay. All right. We do have two members who have asked to be present and participate remotely. That's Ms. Mensing and Ms. Franklin. Let's see. Ms. Mensing has requested to participate in the meeting remotely from Manassas Park due to childcare. There is a present. We do have a quorum, and Ms. Franklin has requested as well. Is there a motion to approve them?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Bailey and a second by Ms. Bagley. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, and we have Mr. McLaughlin, Ms. Bouchard, who just walked in. Okay, Rich, I'm going to turn it over to you for a brief safety moment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have made assignments relative to 911, primary and secondary 911 callers, AED, CPR, and all that. So we've taken care of at least the basics, if you will, as we are participating in this meeting room. I did want to take just a moment, though, and just more from just something to think about. And I know something that we think about predominantly this time of year is that the season's changing. We start shifting from, air conditioning units in our home to heaters and other sources of heat and stuff like that. So as we do, we take a moment at, the beginning of meetings as a staff. We take a moment at the beginning of work assignments and stuff like that, just to have this type of a conversation, divvying out responsibilities and stuff like that. I just really encourage everybody to think about doing that at home as well. If you and your family and stuff, in the event that your smoke alarm goes off or your carbon monoxide detector goes off or something like that, do you have a plan? And specifically when you have kids and stuff in the house, it's always good to have that conversation with the kids in the house, so they understand what the plan is. If an alarm goes off or something like that, what are they supposed to do, right? So just wanted to, just as a reminder, and just encourage people to, to do that within your own home and just pass it along. It's always good to have a plan, right? So anyway, that's my safety moment, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Rich. That's very, very important, and we always need these reminders. Could I have an approval of the agenda? Is there a motion? Okay, motion was made by Ms. Bailey and the second was by Mr. Smith. Okay, any discussion about the agenda? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion carries. Approval of the minutes from the September 20th, 2024 VRE Operations Board. Is there a motion? All right, do we have any corrections or any changes or amendments to the minutes? All right, so that motion was made by Ms. Bailey and seconded by Ms. Bagley. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? Was that Ms. Mensing or Ms. Franklin?
Mensing.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Franklin, are you on? Not yet. Okay, thank you. Okay, do have a few chair remarks today. Welcome to the October meeting. And the Finance Committee will meet in this room at the conclusion of our meeting. You all have a postcard at your desk regarding our ribbon cutting. We're going to celebrate the improvements to the Quantico station in November. I'm very excited about that. You'll find an invitation to on your seat, and on the back of the invitation, I want to thank staff for this. They put the schedule for your train and how you arrive and depart. So thank you very much. That was very helpful to me. Next month's meeting includes an audit committee meeting prior to the start of the operations board meeting and a CEO CLO evaluation committee meeting afterwards, after the meeting. I just want to give the nominating committee a heads up that next month they will be tasked to develop a slate of operations board officer nominees for the 2025 for consideration at our December board meeting. Speaking of December, please let me know if you think that attending the December 20th meeting presents a problem. We would need to change that meeting in November and actually vote on it then. So thought was that we would maybe move our meeting from Friday, December 20th to the Friday before, which would be the 13th. So if people could check their calendars and see if that would work for everyone. Just move it a little further away from the holidays, if the operating board is amenable. Okay, moving on to the Chief Executive Officer's report. Rich, back to you again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And let me just start with real quick, and for those that may have walked in a little late, we have not taken the group photo yet. So we're waiting on potentially a couple more members. As soon as we do that, I believe the chair is just we're gonna take a break for a second, go get that photo taken care of, and then come back in. So we'll just keep going until that occurs. And speaking of, Mr. Watkins. No.
Not a problem. We have not taken the photo yet.
Well, yeah, kind of.
We did.
Wouldn't it be a photo
This AI man.
Yeah.
So
All good. Okay,
So, well, I'll go ahead and go through my report. and
Sure.
See if, so we are expecting.
Mr. Doherty.
Okay, with that, let me just start on the safety side of the house. Just want to let everybody know that as a staff and with our partners, we have updated what we refer to as our rules to live by. And that document and that program is somewhat foundational to our, not only our safety protocols, procedures and stuff, but just really it's part of the foundation of VRE's safety culture, okay? And the importance of this document is that it allows us to basically, lay out, again, safety and security processes, protocols that we do not only from a staff perspective, but our partners and stuff. So for example, when we do solicitations for construction, we do various types of procurements and stuff. This document is included in that solicitation, so they know what the expectations are. So when we update this, of course, we update it with our partners. We get input from, it's not just a VRE staff driven, but it's from all of our various partners. So it ends up being a very good document. It's a good guideline and stuff like that. So I just wanted to make you aware, we just, this past month, finished the update, and we periodically go back and revise over time. Because we're always looking for continuous improvement and better ideas, if you will, on how to stay safe and secure. So on-time performance, similar to previous months, we're still sort of flat, hovering in that system-wide mid 70% range. Excuse me. As the system goes, on this chart, I just wanted to point out down here, when we talk about average delay minutes, of course, if we're going to have a delay, we'd like to manage that in the single digits. We were able to get that down in the month of September relative to previous months. And then, of course, another metric within the sphere, if you will, of delays is just keeping those excessive delays over 30 minutes down. We were able to drive that down a little bit. I will point out that in the month of September, we did have some PTC related issues, and ended up being somewhat of a combination of a couple of things, but I believe the primary culprit had to do with some technology on board our trains. And so we were able to identify that and have a short-term solution, but looking for ultimate root cause and ultimate corrective action. And it has to do with basically there's what we refer to as an antenna farm on top of our equipment that looks like we got some moisture migration into that antenna farm. And so anyway, so some of that, when I talk about congestion and stuff, this month, still congestion, but a little bit of some issues on board our equipment. So just wanted to be transparent in that. Wanted to show you this graph also, and I've showed this to you a couple of times to orientate yourself. Of course, we're just trying to track or isolate congestions. As you see, the majority still of our congestion-related delays are related directly to Amtrak trains, but as you notice in the red there, that too has been coming down. One of the things I'll point out is starting over this past summer and now continuing into the fall, there's a lot of capital maintenance projects that are going on in Washington Union Terminal, specifically on the lower level of Washington Union Terminal and the tracks that we operate on. And so those, at least, during this process, we're seeing some benefits from that. Obviously, like to get that down to zero, but we continue to zero in and monitor on that. Ridership for a 20 service day month, relatively speaking, was pretty strong. Average daily ridership, again, for a 20 service day month, was just a little bit over 6,600. Couple of things happening throughout the month. October 1st, we did, as a staff crew, and of course, in partnership with various jurisdictional staff, we were able to do our master agreement survey. So that was conducted on October 1st, and Saturday, October 5th, was our 4th annual tour day VRE. And if you notice in front of you in that little bag there, a couple of things. All the participants at the tour de VRE were given a pair of socks. Anybody can hand out hats, but so wanted to share that with you. And also wanted just to remind everybody that this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Our focus on this specifically, in addition to this ride, is just we do have a fundraiser for triple negative breast cancer. There's a card inside that bag too, to remind not you, but if you know of folks that might be willing to, contribute to that, we'd be very grateful. But this was a very good event. This is the first time that we had conducted this event along the Manassas line. Previous years, we've done this event over the Fredericksburg line. First time we did it on a Saturday. And just as you can see by the picture there, we had I believe over 170 signed up. We may have had slightly over 150 participants. Last year, we were at about 78, so it doubled from last year. So of course, thank you to Prince William County specifically, who took care of the weather for us that day. As you can see,
Well
it's a pretty sunny day, and we're at Broad Run, so that's why I'm giving the kudos to Prince William County. So anyway, great event, and participate, and of course our vice chair participated in the event. I don't know if you, maybe we'll go back in case you missed that.
I saw that picture.
Maybe. Well, here it comes.
There we go.
Hey.
That's right.
One-handed, yeah. Anyway, again, great event. I do want to give a shout out to Dallas Richards and just about everybody else back there from a staff perspective. Just with all the events that we do, it takes a lot of time, and a lot of time that we're putting these things together. It's outside of normal work hours and stuff like that. So the staff is very much committed to, you know, our community relations, and this is just one of those events. And again, so a shout out to Dallas, Karen, Mark, everybody back there. Everybody knows who you are, everybody in the back. We appreciate you. And then Sunday, October 13th, participated in the Clifton Day Festival. This is an annual event for us. Again, shout out to Fairfax County for dialing in the weather for us on that day. You'll see in that left photo there, clear skies. But again, a great community outreach event for us. And I'll just say, on top of that, the food was awesome. Did I get anybody in the back, right? The food was great. Yeah, absolutely. Also earlier this week, participated in a groundbreaking with our, predominantly our federal delegation and the VPRA board and some other very important people. This was a good event. And for those that this was called out earlier, I'll just, yes, former VRE Ops Board member Sharon Bulova still out there with a shovel in her hand building stuff, right? So, and she's been on the VPRA board since its inception. So anyways, a great event. Arlington County did okay. I know Takas was there. I mean, a little cloudy, but the weather was okay. It wasn't as cold as the previous event that we had.
We have always to request that from the feds. It's
Oh, that's okay, I got it. This one. But yeah, great event. And then I do want to announce we do have a new staff member, and I'll do as much as I can to highlight his very esteemed accomplishments. But in the back, we have Brandon Lindsay. He's come on as our human resources manager. You're going to have to stand up, and I know I asked you to prepare a speech. We'll get to that. But Brandon actually began this week as part of the VRE staff, like I said, as our human resources manager. Brandon comes to us. He has an MBA with a concentration in organizational leadership, bachelor's degree in administrative justice. He has earned his professional and human resources designation from the HR Certification Institute. Brandon's experience comes a host of very specific HR related programs, but he went to school at Pitt, spent 4 years on the football team there at Pitt, spent a year with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then did a little bit of time with the Canadian Football League. So just wanted to welcome Brandon to the team, and he's the guy standing up in the back if you don't notice. So and no, really, I was kidding all along. You don't have to give a speech or anything like that. So you just have to raise your hand, make sure everybody can see you back there. So just join me in welcoming Brandon to the team. And that is my report, Madam Chair.
All right. Any questions for Rich on his report? Yes, Andrea.
find the humor. I came in and Brandon said, I said, good morning. No, and he said, good morning. He said, very HR-ish. Good morning.
You would notice that, of all people, right? So I just want to say, Brandon, boy, you are a really smart guy because you got out of that NFL football stuff.
Yeah.
Way to go. All right, welcome aboard. Grateful to have you. All right, VRE accepts public comments both in person and electronically via the VRE website. Members of the public wishing to make public comments have 3 minutes and should state their full name and the jurisdiction they live in. Written comments submitted before 8:00 a.m. this morning will be forwarded to members of the board and attached to the official minutes. Do we have any members of the public here who would like to address the board? Didn't see any. Okay. Madam Clerk, do we have any electronically submitted comments?
Madam Chair, the comments were submitted.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. I think this is the first time since I've been chair this year where we only have one action item. I was like, Rich, are you sure this is accurate? So we're moving right along to item number 9A, authorization to issue a request for proposals for mechanical engineering consulting services. Rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, just seeking authorization to issue a request for proposals as identified in the resolution in the background. And I know we come at you with, general planning consultant services. We come at you with general engineering consultant services. So this is just one of those many alphabet soup type consulting services, but just want to inform the board that this is specific to its mechanical engineering. It's actually very specific to locomotives and passenger rail cars. Okay, and we keep it's a task order contract. We have kept over the years, probably since the inception of VRE, we've kept the mechanical engineering consulting services on board. For example, like they help us with procurements on rolling stock. They help us do analytical work for our life cycle maintenance program. So this contract is actually up in May of 2025, but it's never too early to get this process started. So that's why we wanted to come at you with, and this wasn't just planned because we didn't have any other action items or anything for you. This was actually scheduled to be on this agenda at this time. So that's my summary, Madam Chair.
Any questions for Rich? Yes, Janet.
So, I mean, it totally makes sense that we would have mechanical engineering help, but it makes more sense for us to do this as a consultant versus hiring somebody? Like a staff person?
Yeah, so what this consulting services does for us is that it provides us access to a host of subject matter experts, frankly. And so maybe it's under the mechanical engineering services, there's actually specialties in the true mechanical side of things, but then there's specialties in the electronic side of things, even hardware, software, that type of stuff. So instead of having, a person, if you will, that knows it all, this gives us access. One of the things with some of our procurements, though, when we use federal funds, we're required to have a third-party consultant on our behalf, actually, providing some oversight work. So there's some compliance things that are involved with this as well. So.
Any other questions? All right, do we have a motion? Okay, I have a motion by Supervisor Bailey and a second by Supervisor Karantonis. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Right. Thank you. Ms. Franklin, is Ms. Franklin on yet? Okay, thank you. Okay, any against? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to our information items, our spending authority report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for your for your review as required. Spending authority report is in here as an information item. If you have any questions about that, glad to entertain any questions now or later.
Any questions for Rich on the spending authority report? All right, draft 2025 legislative agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with this and the next couple of information items, we do have some just not full-blown presentations, just some briefings here. So Joe Swartz, our Director of Government and Community Affairs, will give us a update, including the process. Just remind everybody the process of adopting this legislative agenda. So with that, Joe.
So the legislative agenda, or good morning, my name is Joe Swartz. I'm the Director of Government and Community Affairs. The legislative agenda is one of those items that the commission still has to pass. So when we bring this as an action item, it'll be a recommendation to the commissions. So we'll discuss it today as an info item. We'll bring it back next month as an action item, and then at the December meeting, the commissions will act on it. That's the plan anyway. So I guess I will start by looking to the chair of the legislative committee and see if he wants to say anything. Chair.
I was prepared for you.
Okay. So let me start on the federal side, or two sides of the sheet, although I guess you're looking at them electronically. Most of the issues that we have are issues that we've been tracking for the last couple of years. So only one or two new things. The rail passenger transportation liability cap. Again, this is an issue where we have to buy a certain amount of liability insurance every year. And the amount that we have to buy is federally mandated to go up basically by CPI every 5 years. So real problem here is that once we know how much we have to buy the new amount, we have 30 days to go buy that. And it's not just us, it's every commuter rail organization in the country. So as you can imagine, a whole bunch of entities going to the market at the same time to try and buy this liability insurance does not behoove us when it comes to price and even capacity. Sometimes we have issues with the market just saying we don't have enough. So we've been working with other stakeholders, the Commuter Rail Coalition in particular, APTA as well, American Public Transportation Association, to try and work on that 30 days and make it give us a full year. So basically, when we go normally and re-up our insurance, we can get the new cap at that point, and it gives the market a little bit more room to maneuver. So we're going to continue to work on that. We do think that has some chance of passing this year. The CRC is pretty high on it. We're going to go talk to, in fact, we're going to go talk to our senators and see what they can do to help. But all of the commuter rail agencies are going out to talk to their legislative folks about this. So hopefully that's going to move forward this year. Let's see. First Street Tunnel. This is something new on here. We, in partnership with the state, or I guess the state in partnership with us, are doing all this great work to add capacity. Fourth track at LaFont, and of course the new Long Bridge. But we still have a choke point, and it's the First Street Tunnel. That is the section just north of our LaFont station going into Union Station. It is a very old tunnel. It needs a lot of state of good repair work to be done, and in fact needs some upgrades in order to increase the capacity. So very important to us, very important to Amtrak. And at the end of the day, if we want to see run-through service, it's going to be very important for that work to get done. On the downside, it's not our project. It's not a state project. It's Amtrak. It's 100% Amtrak. So why we put this on there is we just think it's something that we need to be keeping an eye on. Amtrak is currently studying it. That's great. We'll hear what the study says. We think we pretty much know what it says, that it needs a lot of state of good repair work. And then ultimately, it's going to need some signaling if we really want to be able to move a lot more trains through there. But we will keep an eye on that one. Is basically what this is saying is us, the state, Maryland, DC, anybody who cares about this, we all want to keep an eye on this and make sure it keeps moving, basically. And then the rest of these are things that have been on here the last couple of years. We'll keep an eye on federal grants, the Infrastructure Jobs Act, any new regulations and rulemaking, STB authority, and what's going on with the federal workforce. Again, I know that we want to keep an eye on this. We are not advocating one way or the other, whether or not the federal workforce should be going back to work more days a week, but we want to know what's going on the Hill. So that's it for federal issues. Can I answer any questions before we go to state?
Any questions for Joe on the federal issues? All right, thank you.
All right, flip over to state. Commuter rail exemption for Virginia state tax on surplus lines insurance. I love talking about insurance. So this is something that we put in last year, and it did very well. It's basically because we're using a broker, the broker has to pay tax on the insurance that they buy for us. Everything else that we buy, we're tax exempt. So we just want to make this tax exempt. Passed the House unanimously, no problem. Didn't get out of Senate Finance last year, but they said, we think it's a good bill. We want to study it some more. So we've been working with Treasury. They've been studying it. They're going to come back and go, yeah, this sounds fine. One of the things they wanted to find out was, is there anybody else in the state that is sort of in the same situation? It sounds like they haven't found anybody, so it's just us. But hopefully we will get this bill through this year. Future additional service funding. Of course, we all know that SJ 28 is going on. We know DMV moves is going on. So we want to keep an eye on that and continue to talk about that with our legislators. But in particular, I think opportunity to go down and talk to our legislator, talk about us not in the same context as WMATA and all of the other transit agencies in the state, that we have some very specific issues that we want to talk about. That we believe we should be increasing funding, especially when the capacity of the track and the Long Bridge is there, but we can't do that on the backs of purely the jurisdictions here. That there's going to need to be some additional funding from somewhere. So we wanted to talk about that without having to talk about Metro to the other bus services. And let's see, C-Rock.
No offense, Bob.
He's going to go down and talk about how he needs to be.
Exactly.
C-Rock, to keep this on here, we just want to make sure, as talking about new funding for different things, that nobody says, oh, why don't we take a little bit of that C-Rock money? VRE doesn't need all of that, so we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And we're always watching FOIA, because FOIA seems to change a little bit every year. So any questions there? And I guess the big question here is there anything we're missing? Is there some other issue that should be on here that you would like to see us talk about?
Are they missing anything from a state perspective? Seems like you're on top of it.
Right. Well, then we will be back next month.
Yeah, it would be interesting to, if you could maybe report next month on the study that they're doing and what's come out of that study, if anything.
Which study? The SJ 28 or
The SG 28 that they decided to study this year.
Okay.
Yes.
We can certainly do that.
That will help us talk to our delegations, and we all have our delegation meetings coming up. So that would be helpful.
There are also interim reports on that in BDC, so we can coordinate that.
I'm sorry, could you
There are
repeat?
also interim reports on this at the Transportation Commission, so we can actually coordinate that content. because
Okay.
it's substantial.
Great. Yeah, anything you can bring back to the ops board would be helpful.
Will do.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Want to do the picture? Okay. Oh, okay, got it. All right, if it's okay with everybody, we're gonna take a quick break, and I don't think Mr. Gordy is coming, so we don't want to keep the photographers here any. All right,
Break time.
You already know.
He already knows.
All right, so everybody can go out.
you know.
Doing
Yeah.
Yes, we've got some top 9 for 6.
We have a couple
There's a couple of pieces there.
Franklin, how's your check?
Yes. Yes.
That one, I mean, we would.
Ms. Franklin, can you hear us?
But
Now she's on a general.
we're clicking.
Mayor.
We didn't hear you that time.
She's really competent. She has a really great background.
63.
Worked like National York City, organizations for development, so she's got a good rounded, you know.
Oh, yeah. It's not-
Yeah, so.
Yes, Ms. Franklin,
She's all
doing an
set.
audio check.
Our council does.
It hasn't seen it.
We have 6 Democrats.
We still did not hear you.
It's just like, it should be fine. Do you know what I mean? It should be fine.
They're not
No
so
way.
great.
She's so small, it's only 15. It's her big.
Ms. Franklin, we still didn't hear you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't say anything. There's a lot of chatter, so I wasn't sure if I heard my name or not.
They're all at bar.
All right, thank you.
They've moved. You know, like it's not like.
How many seats? 6. 2 independents.
Okay.
So 9.
Did other
6 seats. Yeah.
We're ready to go
Oh,
back
sorry.
live.
Oh,
Just
Okay.
happened. Ms. Franklin has joined.
she has. Okay. All right, so we're ready?
Are you recording live stream? We're ready.
Okay, we are back live. Apologize for that moment where we had to take some photos. So now we are on 10C, which is the draft Manassas line funding agreement. All right, Rich.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to, we did link the draft agreement to the agenda, and I know we did the same at the commission level packages for earlier in the month. Just wanted, again, some redundancy here and primarily some transparency. I will just touch on it, just from a process standpoint. This agreement, of course, we've been working directly with VPRA on this funding agreement. Also, more specifically, over the course of the last couple of months, we've actually been working, directly with FTA. As we stated, or I've stated before, one of the potential opportunities here that has a high probability of working out for us is the use of our federal formula funds that essentially has already been allocated to us to make over time this contribution. And just as a reminder, it's the commitment here would be a total of $155 million over 5 years. Okay. There is what we refer to as a year 0 payment. And then subsequent payments would happen on an annual basis. And as it relates to the annual payment or contribution, that would just roll into our normal budget process. And so we would identify the amount and of course what the source is. And that's essentially how this agreement has been teed up. I will say that if there's, as we continue down this path with utilizing federal formula funds, frankly, if in that process we find that, we could actually make those contributions sooner rather than later, not necessarily wait out the 5 years, then we'll bring that to you and we'll have that discussion. So again, just wanted to put it up there, see if anybody has any questions. It's an information item. You're not taking action on it or anything like that. I'm likely to come back next month and ask for a recommendation. We'll have some additional information as it relates to our work with the FTA. We'll get a little bit more granular, more specific on that. And then, of course, it does not just today, it's if over the course of the month or whatever, if you have any questions, absolutely feel free to reach out to us myself, Steve, and or Mark, who are the primary staff members working on this. So that is my summary of this information item, Madam Chair.
Any questions for Rich on the draft master agreement that's in our board packet? Okay. All right, budget update.
Okay, now we can do it because the clicker, oh, wait a minute. There we go. Madam Chair, thank you. Mark Schofield, Chief Financial Officer, just gonna give you a quick update as we would normally do as we continue through our budget process. Just hit the highlights and I think this is also a preview, sort of an invite or a preview to the Finance Committee meeting that immediately follows this meeting. So with that, Mr. Schofield.
Thank you, Rich. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I view today as kind of like the part of sort of VRE where we were coasting downhill into Clifton. And next will be like climbing out to Manassas. As Rich talked about earlier, we completed the master agreement survey at the beginning of the month. That was a great team effort by Chris and his staff. Also, we had a lot of help from your jurisdictional staff, mostly in your transportation and planning departments. They were out there in the wee hours doing the counting of the passengers on the platforms. Those are the two pieces that sort of go together into the survey. We'll actually talk a little bit more about that at the committee, but I want to express my appreciation to them. So thank you. We were at NBTC and PRTC on October the 3rd. They advanced the preliminary budget that we had presented to you back in September on the jurisdictions. Again, just sort of keeping the process moving. We got some good questions from both of those meetings. We are kind of really in the weeds right now, being led by our budget manager, Mr. Buchanan, meeting with all of our department heads, meeting with the capital project managers, trying to refine the budget in terms of the capital projects, making sure we understand the scope, schedule, budget, have everything lined up there in terms of the operating budget. As we mentioned last month, looking for opportunities to reduce cost where we can, if it's not really about putting people in the train, how we're generating ridership. And we are also, this is actually relevant to the question that Ms. Holmes had. We're looking at, are we achieving the right balance between FTEs, part-time employees and temps, and contractors, and just looking at the balance of the work there in the operating budget. The discussion that we're going to have after the meeting today at the committee meeting, I will dig into this subsidy allocation and the survey a bit. I know that it's hard to have a discussion about the overall level of the ask that we put in the budget for the jurisdictional contribution without also knowing about how much is my individual jurisdiction going to be asked, because those won't always necessarily be the same number in terms of the change from last year. So we'll try to advance that discussion a little bit. And then I want to have a more sort of qualitative discussion about the interplay between the remaining pandemic money, the jurisdictional contribution, and then exactly what Joe was talking about before with the SJ28 effort. And in addition, as I mentioned, we'll next month will be a little bit more of an in-depth discussion, and that will include we haven't really yet touched on the capital program, so we'll do that a lot next month. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mark? I know a number of us are staying for the finance meeting, so we'll get into the meat of things a little bit later. All right, thank you, Mark. All right, that concludes our information items. Now we have operational board members time. So I'll start with Ms. Bagley.
Well, you all saw the photo. I took part in the tour to VRE, and I just want to commend Rich and all of his staff. It really was a beautiful day and a great event. And I think like the event continues to get better each year. So I would encourage any of you, even if you don't want to ride, they have stops at each of the stops. People come check in, take photos, have snacks. And so would invite anybody to participate because it's a really nice, we had people like clapping for us on the roads and stuff. It was a really pleasant experience. So thank you very much to everybody.
Great, Mr. Smith. All right, thank you. Mr. Stewart.
I absolutely regret I didn't make VRE. VRE this year, and we had a groundbreaking for major development of a project I've been working on for. So that was the reason I couldn't make it, but we do have the tour of the mountain for this Saturday, so anyone who would like to. It's this Saturday. We have about 250 riders, about 40 youth riders. It's really the second time we've done it, so hopefully we'll get a good group. It's a 3-mile ride for the youth, and for adults it's either 20 or 40 miles. And you literally ride through all the different parkland. I mean, we have national, regional, state, county parks, as well as a whole bunch of historic areas to go through. Wonderful ride. So I could make VRE and do that.
Okay, Mr. Walkinshaw. All right, Mr. Carantonis.
I failed once again to make the video. There are good excuses, something about the elections and but I was shamed by a group of people who I would recruit to make it, and they came back and say, "Where are you?"
Oh, no.
So that was particularly painful because they apparently had a very good time. So I hope the next year will be elections again. But
We appreciate your honesty.
Yeah, right.
All right, Mr. McLaughlin.
I want to thank the Dallas and the team for delivering Quantico. And there's an associated project called the Arcadale Project, about 9 miles of track. It's also very important. So I look forward to that ribbon cutting on the first day. It's been not easy. I think just been many things happening in the area, the Quantico Arcadale area, having nothing to do with VRE, the soil there, the other issues going on at Arcadale over the years. So this is quite a milestone. And hopefully there'll be a lot more. This will be a ribbon cutting after a shovel ceremony that Rich and others were at. So a lot more of these to come, a lot more successes to come. Thanks to the VRE team for delivering that project.
Thank you. Dr. Schneider. All right, Mr. McIsaac. All right.
Just wanted to echo what Mr. McLaughlin was saying about, I'm excited about the Quantico ribbon cutting. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciated when Fredericksburg had their ribbon cutting, how many people showed up, and it really was a celebration, and I'm looking forward to being at Quantico.
Right.
Pass.
Ms. Hayes, Ms. Gary, Ms. Bailey.
Yeah.
We know that. You've got this big grin, and we know how excited you are about Quantico.
Being a Marine Corps wife, I'm real excited about Quantico.
Sure.
So thank you so much to the team for all that you've done to bring this along. And Dan, I know with me by 8 years, it's been like forever. So I'm very appreciative that I did make the tour as well. It was my birthday. I got very excited.
All right.
And so I want to thank Mark also for one key thing that you said about making sure that the communication about the budget. I know you always do this, but it's so critical that that's continual to make sure that we're making good decisions for this great place called VRE. And so that's all I got. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, I wanted to say that my only valid excuse was a class reunion. You know, you can't miss those. But anyway, it sounds like it was a great event, as always, and hopefully I can attend next year. I do want to, I'm very excited about the Quantico Day. And as I said to staff, thank you very much for putting this in our email, the trains. That made life very easy. And I just want to introduce Trinette Bouchard. She is here as an interim clerk working with Leslie. So to make sure that we have continuity in the event we need it. So thank you for being here today and appreciate your efforts. And you didn't even need Leslie, see? All went well. Okay, and I think that's it. We are without objection. I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you. We'll see you in November.
For in a few minutes.
So around 5 to 7 minutes, we'll reconvene as the finance committee meeting.
Greg, you
Yes. Make sure that Mark gets.
And I have like a little,
It just sounded right.
well,
Miss Mansing already left.
Did the nap time.
Oh,
I'm gonna go tell them.
Margaret, that come with me. Like,
Well-
something else. Like, my niece is coming into town. Let's see.
All right, let's give Dan our full attention.
Franklin is still online.
She's on, okay, excellent. Well, welcome, Ms. Franklin, and welcome everyone here. It is a pleasure to see somebody here, but I also know why we're all here.
Right.
This is one of those meetings that we need to kind of dig into it and understand better what our top choices are going to be moving forward. And so I appreciate I think the work that we've done this year to kind of hopefully prepare us a little bit more for those conversations. Appreciate Mark and the work that you've done to make that happen too. So, with that, we will get right into it.
Thank you. Yeah, we're doing this old school. We do not have the slides up. We're just doing it on the paper. So we have two topics that I'd like us to chat about today. One is more of a process discussion about how does this subsidy allocation work, so that everyone is on the same page with that as we dig into the discussion about how ultimately what we're going to adopt in the budget. And then the second one is more of a sort of strategy policy discussion about how the subsidy and the pandemic relief money that we have left and the SJ's community stuff that Joe was talking about, how does that, all those things are kind of adjacent to each other. So I just want to get some of your feedback on that. So if we go to the page that's titled Subsidy Allocation Overview, that should be page 3. So you all as the board will determine what is the total contribution from the jurisdictions that's in the budget coming up. The results of the master agreement survey, and this whole process is laid out in the VRE master agreement, which is why we have given it that creative name of the master agreement survey. That determines then, if the subsidy total is $18 million, let's say, how does that get allocated out to each of the jurisdictions? That is laid out in the master agreement, and the survey results are what drive that. I think the two most important things to remember, I don't know, Stephen, I don't know if you were involved in this way back in the day, but I think when they created the master agreement, they thought through a lot of the issues here that might need to be addressed. So I give them some credit when they did it. One is that this comes down to where riders live, not what station they get on. So you might think about the stations in your jurisdiction and wonder how busy they are. But particularly if you're talking about end of the line stations like Spotsylvania or Broad Run that are drawing people, Spotsylvania might be drawing people from Caroline County, might be drawing people from lots of different places. That those people, say from Caroline County, don't go into your calculation as a Spotsylvania member. You're only worried about people who live in Spotsylvania, for example. It's the same thing for Prince William. If a person comes in from Loudoun County, they're not a part of the calculation. It's only about how many people live in Prince William. I think that's important to remember. And the other is that we talk a lot of times about the allocation being driven by ridership, and it is primarily driven by ridership. But the formula does also take into account how much the people, your citizens, are paying to VRE. So people who, say, live in Spotsylvania are taking the longest and most expensive rides on VRE. And so the formula takes into account the fact that they are paying more on their trip. And so if you look at that little chart that I have down there, this doesn't list all the jurisdictions, but it just gives you an idea. The closest in jurisdiction being of the participating jurisdictions, so we're not including Arlington and Alexandria here. Fairfax being the closest in of the participating jurisdictions. Its riders are taking the shortest trips on VRE, paying the least in terms of the fare. So Fairfax, in last year's, they accounted for 26% of the total ridership in the calculation, but they pay 30% of the subsidy. They, Mr. Walkinshaw and the county pay a little bit more because their riders are paying. Prince William, being kind of in the middle of this system, their riders pay taking sort of average length trips for 30% of the riders and 30% of the subsidy. And then if you look at the other end of the line, it's Spotsylvania, 15% of the ridership, but only 12% of the subsidy, again, because the Spotsylvania riders are already paying more out of their pocket. I think that's, we tend to talk just about ridership, but it's important to remember that how much people are paying also does go into the calculation. So if we go to the next page, this is really a multi-step process. So as we mentioned, we were out there, we all were out there on October the 1st, doing the administration of the survey on the trains. We get really, really good response rates every year in the 65 to 70% range. So we feel confident that we're not just sort of capturing a random sample of the riders, that we really are getting a good picture of who is riding us. And then the other half, though, is, like I mentioned, we count the number of riders who are getting on in each station. So we might have, and riders tell us where they got on, and they tell us where they live. So somebody might, if we got, I'm just making these up, if we got 20 surveys back from people who got on at Quantico, but we observed 40 people get on at Quantico, we take the numbers got from Quantico on the surveys and we double them, because we're assuming that that's a representative sample of the people that got on at Quantico, if that makes sense. And what you see very clearly in the data is that people who are on the train longer, coming from Spotsy or Fredericksburg or Broad Run, answer the survey more. They have a higher response rate because they have more time, right? They're like, oh, sure, I'll do this. Somebody who's getting on at Lorton, maybe, the response rate is lower because they're just not on the train first. They're like, ah, sorry, I gotta go. And we don't want to punish those jurisdictions that are where their people are on the train longer by saying, oh, you had more riders. No, we need to scale it up relative to the actual riders. Is that all? So Chris and his team have made tremendous progress in sort of automating the survey, being able to scan it in, move much more quickly. You know, we used to give this information to the operations board like after Thanksgiving, and so we've really tried to move it up. The one part that we haven't been able to automate yet is people don't always know exactly where they live.
Yes, they say Fredericksburg when they do not live in Fredericksburg.
And it is important that we really do this and go through it, and it's a hand correction process, because we have them tell us what jurisdiction they live in, and then we have them tell us what their zip code is. And we can look at the zip codes and say, you said you lived in the city of Fredericksburg, you said you lived in the city of Manassas, you actually live in Stafford, you actually live in Prince William, wherever. It is, or you say that you live in Alexandria, but you actually live in Fairfax County. Lots of that. It's important that we do that, I think, particularly for the small jurisdictions, because it's those older places, you know, the Manassases, the Fredericksburgs, that have those issues. So we are still in the process of cleaning up that data. I had hoped that I would be able to bring the final data to you today. We still have just a couple days worth of work on that. We will, Rich, if you're okay with it, I would like to get, we're very close to having the data. I'd like to get it out to you all before the November operations board meeting, that you all have a chance to dig into it and
Mark,
digest it. Yes, please.
And if you said this, I missed it, but you know, we have everybody that lives south of Courthouse Road in Stafford all has a Fredericksburg address. Okay, kind of like Spotsylvania, but they all live in Stafford County. So it's not just the small jurisdictions, it's like you mentioned.
Right.
I mean, and it's,
if they say I live in Fredericksburg, but they really live in Stafford.
or Spotsy.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll take care of it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Because using the zip code, and we ask them 3 pieces of information, actually. We ask them, what jurisdiction do you live in? We say live, we should maybe say, where do you pay taxes, but we don't ask that. One is what's your zip code, and then what is the cross street of I mean, they don't have to give their house address, but like, what's the nearest cross street that you live on? And if they live in a zip code that splits across jurisdictions, then that's the really manual part. We will go look at the address that they wrote down and say, okay, you actually live in.
Right. And we appreciate that level of detail.
Oh, it's.
What's the total right now? How many responses?
It is.
How many surveys?
Can we go to the next page and I can,
Yeah.
no, well, this isn't survey responses, this is station boardings. But just to give you an idea that we saw on that day a pretty normal pattern of service, and we are up 8% roughly in terms of boardings. on both lines compared to the day that we did this survey last year. And if you just, I didn't call out each individual station. Most of them you see sort of a, 5 to 10% growth over last year. There are a few that where the numbers are down. Leland Road, for example, had lower boardings just on the day of the survey than last year. Manassas Park had slightly lower boardings, again, just on the day of the survey versus last year. But overall, we are seeing on both lines about an 8% growth relative to the day that we did the survey last year. But again, I don't want to present you all preliminary numbers without knowing, hey, did that person really live in Spotsy, or do they really live in Caroline County or someplace like that? So, but just to say, I think even though I was a little worried because it was kind of a rainy day on the day that we did the survey, but the service was good. The number of passengers coming out was very normal. So I think we got it. I think we got a good day of the survey. So.
The day?
Yeah.
It was a Tuesday, October 1st.
Would that have been similar to previous year? I mean, around the same?
It's always early October, and it's always either a Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, it's the first week of October, Tuesday, Wednesday. Try to pick the higher ridership day.
So again, and it is purely coincidental that the 8% ridership increase is also that we asked for an 8% increase in the subsidy. Those have nothing to do with each other. It's just no way. But again, as soon as we know, I understand that there are some folks who have some concerns about the ask in the budget. We can talk about that. But also that it's challenging. The overall might be 8%, and your jurisdictions might only be 2%, or it might be 15%, and that's even harder to do. So we will get this information out to you as soon as we can. So.
I'm just gonna on the Fredericksburg Manassas line question. The kind of immediate post-pandemic recovery, the ridership on the Fredericksburg line was growing. I mean, still not as fast as we'd like, but was growing much faster than the Manassas line. It seems to have reached an equilibrium, but still relative to pre-pandemic, the Fredericksburg line is a higher proportion of ridership than the Manassas.
That's correct.
But they're now growing at the same
There's some
rate.
growing
Manassas isn't catching back up.
That's a very good way to put it.
Questions on this page?
Okay. Great. So now just having that in the back of our heads, shifting to the next one, the one that's kind of orange and blue. Again, you've seen a version of this many times, just always wanting to let y'all know where we are in terms of the pandemic relief money. The CARE is fully drawn, the rescue plan about half drawn, and the CRISA still remaining. We get questions all the time. Are the funds in grants? Are they obligated? Yes, they are all in grants. Shouldn't be subject to being pulled back. And we are still projecting mid-2020 specific fund for all the pandemic relief to be fully utilized. So shifting then to the next page, and that again, I'd like to sort of open this up for discussion. The sort of the interplay again between the relief money, the jurisdictional contribution, and then what we hope will come out of the SJ28 process and or the DMV moves process. Rich and I have sort of divided and conquered on those. Rich has been on one of the committees for DMV moves, and I'm on the working group for SJ28. I can talk a little bit more about that, Rich, if you want to jump in on the DMV moves. So I just to go through the points here, our sort of core market, always has been in the past, and at the moment is still being the commute ridership market. It is recovering. We've seen about that 8 to 10% increase from last year to this year, the day we did the survey. But where we are not yet, and I don't think expect to see big step increases like we were hoping to before. We're going to see this huge return to the office. And so again, I expect that to continue to grow. I don't expect
What don't you expect?
Woo.
Technical term, yes. But as Rich has talked about, sorry.
It's a finance term.
Finance. As Rich has talked about many times, as you all have sort of given us the direction, there are new markets out there that we need to tap, whether it's reverse, the off-peak. And all of that is kind of going under the umbrella of us transforming from a commuter railroad to a regional railroad. That is going to take years. That's going to take more rather than less support. You okay, Mr.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. And I think in the medium term also, as we really get into construction on Long Bridge, the fourth track, Crystal City, some of these major, Alexandria, we are going to see some challenge, some impacts to our service that I think having the new seminary yard is going to help us to mitigate a lot of that, but we are going to have to tackle that in the medium term also. So all of that to say is, I think seeing what's happening at the SJ28 discussions, I think the next 12 to 18 months, and this really goes to what Joe was talking about in his piece. I think the next 12 to 18 months are really going to be critical for us in terms of building that long-term support to identify new revenues, not just us, obviously. OmniRide, the local buses, WMATA, we're not going to do that. But we are not, I don't think we are going to be getting back to, the 50% recovery that we used to have, pre-pandemic. And we're not, we are not, at least at the moment, on a trajectory of sort of sliding into using the last of the pandemic. We're still using it at a pretty good clip. And so I think coming into, say, the FY27 budget process 1 year from now, or the FY28 budget process 2 years from now, we need to have made a lot of progress, I think, on the SJ28 and the DMV moves in order to be able to navigate that transition. Yeah, as Joe said, as I have made clear a couple different times in the working group with SJ28, it's not going to be balanced on the backs of the local jurisdictions. That's just more, given all the other needs that you all have beyond transportation. That's just not a plausible path. And yet, everyone has agreed that this is an investment. This is a 30-year investment that's already been made with all these tremendous investments that VRE is making. And so we don't want those to go to waste as well.
Mark, can you talk a little bit about the ridership changes, but also the projected parts of that? I know that and ridership changes, but we also know we not meet our revenue projections, meeting them in terms of passenger projections. So are you looking at that in relation to this too? We have ridership increases, but that doesn't have a corresponding increase in revenue. And we really shouldn't focus on that. We should focus on revenue. I mean, we want the ridership increases, but the revenue impact is cool.
Yeah, I think our projections of like average fare per passenger have been relatively on point. And so the passenger revenue shortfalls in terms of not meeting our projections have really been about not meeting ridership. So in terms of pricing, I'm making a pricing versus number of riders distinction there.
That's what I want you to, because I'm looking at the overall picture. I did, so relatively speaking, the revenue per passenger, because it's a blend, right? is on target.
It's held pretty steady. We've seen, as you would expect, we've seen a shift of some people away from monthly passes previously into 10 trips because they're not riding as many times per week. But overall, the average per passenger has held up pretty well. Because that's been counterbalanced a little bit by
more growth in longer trips. So that's shifted the average back up a little bit. So it is primarily about the number of riders, not so much about how much they're paying. Does that make sense?
So when we think about strategy here in all these processes since J28 and moves, etc., the first thing that we are going to be asking is systemic support for the system, right? So that we can, because the ridership is not going to come until and unless we have invested in the system so that we can do that. So, for example, we are trying to increase ridership right now with weekend and shifting the paradigm of being a computer system, but also a general transportation system, transit system. How well are others receiving that?
I would say fairly well. I mean, we have, I'd say we have two stages of need, which I think we're sort of talking about here. We need support just to continue to run what we're running. And then we're going to need additional support to take advantage of all the new capacity to provide the weekends, the off peaks, that kind of stuff. So we need when you get down to brass tacks in the SJ28 or the DMV moves effort and put a number to say, what is VRE's ask as a part of this larger ask? We have to have both pieces. We can't just make ourselves whole for the next 6 years or something. And then when Long Bridge opens, we're like, oh, what do we do?
So I always understand this conversation as in a two-layered argument. One is systemic base support for the system so that we continue to, as you said, provide the service that we provide today. And then there is a percentage that goes into investment in the system so that the system has a chance to perform it. Right?
Right.
And of course, it runs excellently with what the VRE has done because that gives us a good leverage to say, you see, this is happening. You better be on the train, right? Not intended. So rather than looking at this from your station. So what's the balance between the two? So how much is the base support and how much is the growth? The growth part. Because at the end of account, when we talk with our colleagues, etc., it's we have to talk about this a number of millions has to be in for VRE or.
Sure. I mean, we are using pandemic relief money right now to the tune of $30 to $40 million a year. Again, that's the base support. And again, on the one hand, as ridership recovers, every dollar that we get from the passengers reduces that ask. But again, costs are going to increase over time. So, you're sort of pushing on both ends of that. So, okay. I don't have a number right off the top of my head, but we can pull something together in terms of off-peak weekend, all those things that we want to add. A little bit that we want to add in the near term and a lot before track are opening. I mean, on the one, I would suspect that they are going, I mean, I think, again, you're going to be sort of pushing on both ends. On the one hand, I would expect they probably are not going to have the fare box recovery that the core commute hours do. So we may not be recovering as much out of the fare box. But I think we're also going to be using the assets that we have a lot more efficiently in terms of trains that right now go up spit during the midday are going to be running, reverse. So, it's not just going to be like a one-to-one cost of how the business is now. So we're sort of pushing.
One of the attractive things of the presentation to NVDC and the presentation here on the VRE deal was the cost savings that we get out of it, which is basically
on the yard.
Which is basically this equivalent to what I don't. There are two types of recipients here. One is to say, okay, they have savings, so they can make it with them. And the second is to say, no, we want these savings to be reinvested in the system as in the additional to
Right.
Dan's running it.
I didn't know who was next, but
Okay, just real quick. You say you're currently using the pandemic money. What's the time frame on that? Is that still December 26th?
Mm-mm.
In terms of
The timeframe for using all of it is still sometime in the middle of 2020, fiscal 2028. So call it December of 2027, maybe. That's the middle.
But okay. Thank you.
So kind of tagging on what Andrea said. So if we're in fiscal year 25 right now, 26, we're going to have probably 39 million or so that we're going to use. Okay. Then fiscal year 27 and 28, I plugged in 35 million. So, so basically then we have, that's it.
Yeah, there's a little bit that would dribble over.
Right, some dribs and drabs. So literally fiscal year 28 is the end of the runway, just so everybody understands, correct? Yeah.
But, I mean, could that also be the beginning of a new era in like
It could.
2028, you know, like.
I mean, that's what has to happen.
Right.
Or, yeah.
I mean, we have to think about it that way, but we're trying to clear it up ultimately with the new funding model. Right.
And I guess for me, okay, so Stafford and Fredericksburg were not part of NBTC. So we don't know the intricacies of everything that's going on up there. You know, I see budget cuts that OmniRide has had to take. I don't follow WMATA. I don't have that bandwidth. I'm sure you guys could all give us a quick management summary, but you know, that's all part of everything down in Richmond, really. That's kind of beyond my control. Can you guys give us kind of a high level of what's going on as it relates to that for our knowledge and perspective? I don't know who wants to do that.
Yeah, I mean, so McKay represents us on the sports. I mean, WMATA has made significant cuts. I mean, made cuts to balance the budget last year. I think for us, the DMV moves and SJ 28 question, obviously an important thing is to be part of the conversation, but I do think you hit on what is a very plausible challenge in that what is maybe most likely to come out of it, maybe get to Richmond, will be some kind of local option sales tax or mix of taxes that the WMATA jurisdictions will have the option to implement to fund WMATA and other transit services. For the PRTC jurisdictions or the non-WMATA jurisdictions, that may be a more difficult question as to whether your jurisdictions are going to be interested in doing that. I find it unlikely that there's going to be like a big annual check from Richmond, like they're going to tax people in Buchanan County to pay for VRE. But that's probably a challenge for the future, but something to think about for us. It's not necessarily an easy question given the makeup of VRE and the jurisdictions that appear.
Okay. Talk us through that.
Well, I may add one critical element of how North Virginia thinks about that is it's growing and steadily growing population density, population in total and population density, and the fact that it's obviously that we need to sustain the system to serve all this. Now, it is also true, I mean, this is a critical part, is that the southern part of the region, so is also, and proof of that is the enormous demand that goes at the same time for road infrastructure, right? And so the argument for co-financing, the servicing, the service system will have to be formulated in terms of, okay, this is a mix of options more options. We are making the same argument to our residents, right? Whereas they said that we are trying to provide you with options that the system overall works for. And this is more or less the same argument that we are imagining that you will be making to your residents as well. That's you need to move. There's a lot more of you. I think it's not system. You have to have some support, so multimodal support. It's a functioning rail system. It has to be available. So that's the base argument. And then Womana continues to make, as far as I understand that, and James, feel free to modify this. They have invested a lot of narrative of we are capable of providing more service if we really focus on that. They really invested the dollars to show that they can move. And they can have a of course, it's a completely different game, no question about that. But they wanted to show that, yeah, if you invest a little bit extra, you can actually get a lot more service out of the system.
May I ask?
That point, or did you have a comment on that point? Or
Oh, yeah, go ahead, James.
Just a clarifying question.
So is there an option in SJ 28 to tax all localities throughout the Commonwealth? Because we know that Northern Virginia is a big payer into the rest of the state. So from a legislative standpoint, I would think that you all have, you carry a lot of weight, right? So is that an option that's in there?
That is certainly something that I and we have advocated for. Unfortunately, SJ 28 is specific in that it says Northern Virginia, which I think was a mistake. Shared with Senator Evan. I don't know that the legislation saying Northern Virginia precludes them having that conversation, because I think we have a much better chance of getting path to support transit across the Commonwealth, right? In rural areas, paratransit is critical and a big deal and always needs more money. But unfortunately, that hasn't really been the direction of the conversation. If you look at the makeup of the folks who are on the committee, it's more Northern Virginia centric, quite frankly, than I think it should be.
We made the case through NBTC very early that this is $1.5 billion that goes back down to Richmond because of the
right.
So this is kind of parked because the SJ, as I understand it, SJ 28 is looking at the capacity of Virginia to self-sustain, right? It remains to be seen how far we are going to see an answer that's satisfactory on this, right? So I do think that the argument of how much the system contributes to the whole and how much of this should be actually coming back to invest in the broader regions of transportation capacity. This is still, I agree with James. It was a mistake to narrow it so much, but on the other side, we have to answer this question first, and in order to be able to raise the issue, that goes. But we will be out of runway by fiscal year 28 at this point.
Right. No, I hear what you're saying. So I guess, well, I'll let James go.
I was just going to ask a specific question. I apologize, Mark, if I missed this or didn't understand it. So is it your projection that we get through fiscal year 2028? No, it's when we're sitting down to do the fiscal year 2028 budget. Correct. So we're working on 26 right now. We're going to do 27 and a fiscal year. Okay, got it. And is there, because the funds are obligated, is there any statutory deadline on expending them?
We are using them out of order from what we received them based on a statutory deadline that was applying to the rescue plan money. So we moved that up to number 2 in the queue. The CRISA money had much less of a statutory requirement on it. So I think we're fine in terms of using it all.
So but my question is, in theory, if some way our runway was extended, we could continue to use federal.
Oh, if we were able to stretch it out further.
Yeah.
Yes, for a couple, if we were able to go to 29, 30, that would not be.
And I guess, I guess for me, obviously, we have to advocate and hope that DMV moves, SJ 28 produces something. Obviously, we also have to be thinking about what can we do to extend that runway by, a matter of months. So, question process of scrubbing the budget to the extent that there are savings to be had. On the operating side, what more can be done without reducing service to produce savings over the next 3 fiscal years? So just one question, and we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting, the shift to 6-car trains. Is that something that can be accelerated to find some savings over the next fiscal years? Or other operational savings, setting aside the VPRA agreement, and what can we do now on the savings side to extend runway, even if it's a matter of weeks or months? Or maybe another way to think about it is, if God forbid the SJ 28 DMV moves doesn't produce something by then, to minimize the scope of cuts that we would have to make in FY 28.
So let me just, if I could, in general, answer that question. And this, you and I have been having this conversation specifically for a couple of years. So, it's a continuous process for us. I'll just say that. When we propose some service changes, including dipping our toe into a Saturday service, we were offsetting those increasing costs by reducing concess lengths to 6 cars, because then I can move conductors around, put them on new trains and stuff like that. That's a path forward for us. Frankly, looking at, one of the, and Mark's presented it, this, even I recall a couple of years ago, specifically how some of these contractual, particularly access fees and stuff, they just, they get escalated each year and they're cumulative, and we have to, somehow mitigate that. Partly what drove us in the direction to, pursuing this deal in partnership with VPRA on the NS, right? So, I mean, I wouldn't say that there is, large things that we can do. So what we're spending our time on right now is, the smaller things that add up to larger things. We do have, I will point out, we will have an opportunity to resolicit our operations and maintenance contract, okay? And I'm not suggesting that current contract is, bloated by any means or whatever, but that's always a good opportunity, as we are, as a team of us, actually looking within, that potential ask, if you will, on how we could mitigate, continue to mitigate, if nothing else, mitigate increasing costs. If we could do some cost cutting, that's fine. But as you know, our costs just continue to get up. So it's like, stop the bleeding first. And I'll just say, we just recently had a meeting on this very topic. And for example, one of the current structures in our maintenance, or our operations and maintenance contract, is there's a facilities maintenance component to it. And so got a couple of folks that are actually looking at it. Would it be more cost effective, for VRE staff, because VRE already has a staff overseeing facility maintenance and stuff. Maybe we do that ourselves. We're good at it. We've got good processes and stuff, and not, essentially pay those
contractor markups and stuff like that. So I said this, I was going to do a general discussion or answer to your question, but I believe there's some opportunities, but only so far,
I
right?
think all that's great. I mean, I guess the question I would have is like, what is preventing us? I know there was the 6-car train shift connected to Saturday service. What was preventing us from running all 6-car trains tomorrow
Well,
or next month?
yeah, I mean,
Is it really saving any money?
well,
Do we really save any money?
well, right now, let me just say this right now. If I went out and started six car contests right now, let's just say I start on Monday.
Yeah.
Without being able to, we're still working on the ability to run those Saturday trains, frankly. That's still an issue with a couple of our host railroads. I don't mean an issue in a negative way. It's just, we haven't got there. If we were to do that, the cost cutting would be, we would need to furlough those conductors. And I'm not saying, from a pure business sense that, but then to go and try to get them back right now, it would be tough. It would be very tough.
When the Saturday service starts, we would go to 6-car across the system. Got it.
Yeah. That's the plan.
That's a question of time, if we're still confident that the Saturday service is going to be happening, we're relatively.
We are confident, yes.
One more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I brought this up with Rich. We have a Wednesday afternoon meeting before each Friday meeting. And one of the concerns that I addressed as it relates to the jurisdictional subsidies is, if you look in our 6-year financial plan, we've estimated a 2.5% increase for the jurisdictional subsidies. But yet this year in the budget, we're, projecting 8% increases. And, while that's $150,000 more for Stafford County, any increase for us right now is significant. And I'll tell you why is because we are blessed that we have a lot of veterans in our community, but the veteran relief money is up to $22 million right now. I know the last time I looked for you guys, it was 35 million. I believe in Spotsylvania, it's
9.
Yeah, and
It's rising.
and it's continuing to grow. Prince William, I'm forgetting your number. Yeah, so, yeah, it's very high. And as you know, those are taxes that we cannot collect. Our tax relief actually accelerated this year because we had a number of people that, were 100% disabled, but they actually got to go back and collect on prior years. And so, this is something that's, and we're working on legislation with other communities to try to work with Richmond on this because we don't know where to go. We don't know where to turn for help because those are real dollars that we are not able to collect, and none of you are either. And as you know, this is absolutely nothing against any of our veterans. I love our veterans. I wouldn't be sitting in this seat today if it weren't for what they did for our freedom in this nation. But we have to look at the finance side of it as well. So I personally am concerned about the 8%, given that we put 2.5% in our 6-year plan. And then my biggest thing is, and I'm not saying that I'm not favorable to everything that VRE is doing, and we're in a difficult financial position right now, but it's difficult for me to justify 100% jurisdictional subsidy when I don't have any riders. I mean, I have, you looked at Leland Station, my ridership actually went down. So anyway, I'm just telling you that's where I have concerns, and I just wanted to voice them here with the finance board.
Real.
And I just want to echo that what Meg said, Spotsylvania is in a similar position. When we look at, what our subsidy has been, we went back to pre-pandemic level funding.
and now we have an 8% increase. Although our veteran subsidy isn't as much as yours, it is rising. And in looking at the ridership, you know, it's difficult. People want to know, you know, I'm not riding the VRE yet. I'm paying into it, right? And so it's a hard sell for our citizens. It really is. And I can tell you, my board has not been too excited about additional subsidies on this. So I don't, you know, I think in this upcoming budget, we have no increase in rates at all, right? Is that what we're doing? We're not gonna.
That's where we started.
I really think we have to increase the rates. I mean, I really do. I think that it's unfair to continually hit the jurisdiction. And many of those riders, and I don't know the statistics on it, are getting subsidized by their employment, right, to ride. Is that, yeah.
Many.
So, but at the same time, I mean, it's just unfair. So I want to just echo what Meg said, where our concerns are as well. Thank you.
I wanted to thank Mr. Karantonis about, you know, the way you put it about like the system-based support and growth money. And I think that that's important. And you're right. Planning District 16, which we're all part of, is the fastest growing planning district in Virginia. So we are seeing a rise in population. And I think part of the attraction to our planning district, at least in Fredericksburg, is that we have a train. So, you know, like I know that not everybody is using the train, but it is one of the things that brings people to Fredericksburg. So, you know, I just wanted to put that out there. And then when you talk about the money for growth, that's where we can really see an increase in service. So an increase in service for our area, I think is, you know, like the Saturday service, but just the return trips and that kind of thing is, you know, it's kind of like that balance, right? Like 8% is a pretty big increase for a year. And, you know, my initial reaction to that was like, whoa. And I still think it's a little, you know, it's a big hit. And if that can give us, you know, like the continued service that we have now, and can perhaps, you know, put us in a better position to increase the frequency and increase service, that might be a really good trade-off. So, you know, kind of speaking out both sides there, but, you know, as Commissioner Bailey and I discussed earlier, we're Libras, and so, you know, the scales. That's all I'm saying. And I apologize, but I have to be in Fredericksburg at noon, so I'm gonna duck out.
Okay, yeah, ditto, my friend. But I think we're in a good space right now to face very hard decisions. And I think that, you know, that's some of the jurisdictions really carrying the weight because of the ridership. We've got to come up with a more balanced approach. And for me, what is important to me in understanding that balanced approach is where are we with the decisions that are being made with those organizations that are coming together and looking at this differently, and having a stronger voice in support of y'all and making sure that, I want to go back to something that Commissioner Walkinshaw said, that this is not just about Northern Virginia. This is about all of us. And so what does that, number one, what does that stronger voice look like? Number two, when you talk about increasing the rates, what does that look like? And number three, and Mark, I appreciate you explaining, it was very key to me. You said we're flipping and how we're using, for lack of a better word, how we're navigating those funds. So that's why I think we're in a good place right now. It's a little uncomfortable. It's a lot uncomfortable, but got to make some hard decisions and even work differently in those hard decisions. How we're going to approach this. So that's just my 2 cents.
I would like to know what are the consequences of us not having an increase? What are the consequences of having a 2% increase? What does that look like? Because I think that, you know, it's necessary to know if we are not going to do this or, you know, or can't or whatever, what's the trade-off? So if you could, I don't know if you could provide that.
If you're okay with it, when we give the information about the subsidy allocation, we can include some information about that as well. Yeah, so the vision would be, as mentioned before, not wait till the next board meeting. We'll send you out a memo document and actually give you the, you know, sort of the projected subsidy allocation, if you will. And we can give it to you at 8%, 5%, 2%.
That'd be great.
You know, and just give you some scenarios. That memo, my vision would be giving you information and preparing essentially to have, you know, that discussion at the next meeting, but give you time.
Yeah, that would be great. And because I do think that having weekend service is a game changer in a lot of ways. But the problem is, you know, it's chugging along, right? And I feel like our ridership or our citizens in the southern part really need to see some dynamic movement here.
I didn't want to, which is going to break down the different subsidy levels, 26, 27, 28. Not so much 26, because I think we're still not looking for a lot of change other than maybe looking at different scenarios, but the federal subsidies that we're still using, the $39 million, I think that's going to change dramatically for 26. But I think looking at reducing the use of the federal funds, 27 and 28, I think it's healthier for us longer term. So using nodes, providing a glide path for that. And to that end, I want to know how, so if the federal dollars being used in 27 is 25 million instead of 35 million, what would those allocations look like? And for the same, some sense of, you have to capture $10 million from somewhere else. Is that passenger revenue to jurisdictional subsidies in some formulation of what order of magnitude? I'm looking for some sense
We can do that.
What that would represent. And the supportive, at least, I think we do need to increase passenger numbers. Like everybody else is nervous about it, but I think it's important that we continue that, trying to find out who's really committed long-term to heading in there, ergo, what our subsidies may need to be longer-term until we get to a better place of criticality, if you will, of region transit. Making sure that people are willing to, because the alternatives are now so bad that before we create an identity because of that it becomes looking for other senses of what possibilities are. Again, the near term I get, or I appreciate it, I think we can see that. Cut that down much and still continue to prepare ourselves for the future, but I'm absolutely willing to look at it. But I definitely want to take a look at passenger revenue increase in some sense of what that is. And the last we talked about already, but just the consist, did I say that right?
You did, sir. Absolutely.
Consist. What I now understand better than I did years ago is that fixed costs are so high. Marginal costs, meaning the cost of adding or eliminating training is those costs are fixed costs for the most part. And we know that historically we've had three trains. Basically, with 3 train in and out, that's been, we already started with more or less based on my history. I see that as probably an unbreakable basic service level. So I don't see where there's a whole lot of room to do much with that. Maybe it's 6 cars and you save marginal cost. It's not going to change dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, it's not huge. Yes, you're right. It's an incremental change that could happen, but.
So I'd see kind of our core structure is what it is, and is it, Rich, I know you've mentioned a couple of things that you can look at, but I think it's probably exactly right. How do I keep costs from going up quickly? That really is your need and focus.
Right.
To be honest, in the end, it's about marketing and changing people's. Obviously, the service that we know long term is crucial to our community's development and continue.
Right.
Just a quick question.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, quick question. When's the last time we've done it? Is it on our watch?
Just
When
July.
was it July 1?
We did one.
And HFD is increasing the fares every hour.
That's right. That's
Don't everybody say.
Well, maybe changing the relation. If our monthly pass is not getting as much because people are riding 3 days a week instead of 5 days a week, maybe you create a monthly pass that's higher, but it's essentially 3 days a week has value. That kind of formulation is what somebody needs to look at the ridership and how people are riding. And we'll see. We'll make it so something raise it here and come down here. Marginal improvements.
So I have one more question.
Yeah, sure.
So Mark, as it relates to, our first quarter, revenues and expenses, so we're up 3.2 million for this quarter. And I appreciated the information that you shared with Rich on what made a difference with those numbers. Do you anticipate that being the same for each quarter throughout the year? What kind of projections are you and Alex making as it relates? Because that's a pretty big nut in our favor for the first quarter of the year.
Right. I mean, I would like, for those of you, the $3 million-ish that we're below budget on expense through Q1 is primarily, although not entirely, due to not having the weekend service yet, because that's Keolis costs, that's diesel, that's access fees, all of those things. So I would prefer that to not be a difference, here soon. I think the sooner that we can bring on this Saturday service, the better. Knock on wood, I think diesel prices have been a little lower than we budgeted, so I would hope to see that that continue. The difference in terms of the NS access fees, that's a permanent change going ahead. So I would hope to see us still be in the black from quarter to quarter, but probably not at that same level as Q1.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Well, thank you very much. Let's have you
Yeah, we'll follow.
See if, is Ms. Franklin.
Ms.
still
Franklin,
on?
do you have any questions for us?
He doesn't have a hand raised, but.
Okay.
Okay.
Looks like we're getting ready to end. If you have any questions, please. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Great job, gentlemen.
What is that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.